4040 here, and today I am doing a ship's roster review for Crazyguy. And the first thing I'm going to do, like I normally do, is take a look at your capital ships. And one thing I'm seeing is you don't have a 7-star Grand Admiral Thrawn, which means we want to make sure you have your home one good enough to hopefully get there. And from what I could tell from just looking at your ships is you do have the requisite rebel ships. You have both Ghost and Phantom and 3 other rebels with Biggs, Wedge, and Cassian. So that's really good. That means you're probably really only waiting on getting this 7-star up, and depending on how you did in the 6th tier of the Chimera Legendary event, you may want to gear and work up on home one a little bit just to make sure you get it. But you probably are fine where you at for finishing the event, which is fantastic, which means hopefully soon you'll get a 7-star Chimera, because having a 7-star capital ship can be really helpful. So going off of that though, your Grand Admiral Thrawn is your highest gear of your fleet commanders, which means you definitely want to be using him. And he's what, personally to me, the Chimera is the best capital ship. So I suggest you use him currently for the fleet I'm going to be suggesting. So what is the fleet you're going to want to be using? Well, let's look at your starting 3. First off, you want to have a tank. You actually have 2 really good options here, Biggs and Houndstooth. But based off a look at Biggs, as you currently have his reinforcement ability maxed, which means you probably are using and should use Houndstooth as reinforcement, though Houndstooth is weaker because it doesn't have all 7 stars here. So I would suggest making sure you immediately, if you haven't already, start farming Houndstooth as soon as you get to a position to where you can, because having all 7 stars makes it significantly stronger of a ship. It is good at 4 stars and 3 stars, but it has a lot less health, which means it's a lot easier to defeat on defense. But getting those 7 stars makes it a beast to have to work through. And I've fought some 7-star Houndstooths myself compared 4-star, and I'll fight a 4-star one any day over a 7-star one. But again, it is still hard and annoying to get through. And having a ship like Biggs come in after it is just like, I just killed Houndstooth, now I have to deal with the Biggs as well. And then you want to have TIE Advanced. TIE Advanced just does a lot of damage, and under Chimera Lead is generally considered really good. And at least you don't have to worry about making sure it's putting the taunt on Biggs, at least. And as long as TIE Advance is still around when Biggs does come out, it'll help ensure that Biggs is regenerating protection, which is excellent. And then for your third option of a ship, the 2 good options that I would generally put in with these would be Ghost or Imperial TIE Fighter. I personally, since you don't have Biggs, would probably do Imperial TIE Fighter. However, the problem with both of these is the characters for these teams are really low gear, which means you need to be working on either the characters for the Ghost or the character for Imperial TIE Fighter. Imperial TIE Fighter is probably easier for you in the short term because it's only one character. And I don't know what ship you might want to pair in the short term that would be better. Probably maybe the Ghost. I would just kind of test things out, see how they work. But you really need to probably work on one of these characters to put in, because your other more high gear ships either aren't too useful in the fleet meta or should be used on reinforcements. Like Wedge, he's a decent ship. Nowadays mainly used for light side only stuff like territory battles or for territory wars. You could put him in to get some extra damage out, but not great because it's a rebel under a Chimera lead, and you're not getting the most bang for your buck out of him by putting there's just better ships overall, like the Ghost or Imperial TIE Fighter you could be using there. Millennium Falcon just isn't. You haven't really seen it too much on this stage of the meta. It's more of one of those ships that's just cool to have and maybe potentially use if you know how to use it correctly. I personally have both of these characters gear 11. Just I haven't seen much reason to gear him up. I don't really see him used in any videos I watch that often. It's just fun to have it 7-star and to have the closest thing we do to the original trilogy, Millennium Falcon. So I would really, for a third ship, suggest going with the Ghost or Imperial TIE Fighter. So now that we have the starting fleet of Houndstooth, TIE Advanced, and Imperial TIE Fighter, though, we need reinforcements. And what I always do, and suggest to almost everyone as a first reinforcement, is Phantom 2. And looking over at your Phantom 2, it's not in the best of positions. First off, one of the most important things about Phantom 2 is Covert Strike, which you don't even have the first level on. So you immediately need to think about maxing out Covert Strike here, which means you're going to need 100 reinforcement ability mats to put into it. So this should be your next focus for reinforcement abilities, is maxing out Covert Strike. Trust me, it's useful. Even with an undergeared Sabine and Chopper, use this ship in my arena, and Covert Strike just allows me to immediately bring out another ship next turn, which for me is TIE Advanced normally. Though on your fleet, it'd probably be Slave 1. And I get massive amount of damage with the second most important part of Phantom, which is Maximum Impact here, which just can deal between 80 to 100k of damage if you put enough work into the crew of the ship and leveled up its abilities enough. Which means Ezra is probably the biggest one to gear in this group, just so you can max out the maximum impact ability. But gearing up Chopper and Sabine will increase that damage even more. You also need the 7th star of Sabine. So these are ones to think about. And since I've already suggested gearing up the Ghost, you could always just do a Phoenix focus to get the whole faction up to prove useful in various areas of the game, like territory battles or territory wars. And you'll have 2 great ships with good synergy with each other if you do. Because Phantom and Ghost do come with some fun synergies with each other. Because if you use one on the team, especially if you're using Ghost, you definitely want to use Phantom too. So once you get Covert Strike maxed out and at least get Ezra to gear 10 or 11, you probably want to start using Phantom 2 and be working on those characters for the ship overall, because you will not be disappointed by what Phantom 2 can do for you as a reinforcement. Now, as a second reinforcement, a great one to use for what you got and overall is either going to be Biggs or Slave 1. Both taunt, which is fantastic, and you have both of their reinforcement abilities maxed out, which I believe indicates you're probably using them anyhow for reinforcements. You'll be more likely probably to bring in Biggs if Houndstooth has already been killed, although Slave 1 can do just as fine. Slave 1 will be really good because he's just annoying, can attack, and so you can attack because he has Retribution on him, and deals target lock, and just has some AoEs that are really nice to have access to if you can get to them. Biggs, just you're bringing in another annoying tank. If Houndstooth dies, you have another one with massive amounts of health to get through, and it just really slows down the other team. And you have its ability maxed out, which means he immediately comes out with taunt because he's immediately causing the other side to get target lock on him. Honestly, I probably need to focus on getting his reinforcement ability maxed out myself because it's that useful, and I use him as a reinforcement and don't have it maxed. So that means you have 3 really good reinforcements. Now, based off your high gears, you could go with Millennium Falcon or Wedge, but they're not great. You could just use them until you gear up another reinforcement better. But let's just look at some you have decently geared or decently up right now. Cassian's U-Wing is a fantastic reinforcement because it has lots of dispel abilities for both sides for dispelling buffs and dispelling debuffs, and it comes in and puts offense and defense down if its ability is on the second tier. You just would need to gear up Cassian, Jin, and K2SO a little bit more to use them. But I will imagine, would not be disappointed. And in case you have any trouble with it, gearing up these guys would allow you to do, along with the Phoenix crew, will allow you to do better on the 7-star Chimera event whenever it comes back around. Some other good reinforcements to think about. TIE Reaper is really good. It also, just like Cassian's U-Wing, comes with a Dispel. Just it only has one option in comparison. But it also comes with some turn meter advantage on its defensive formation here. That can be really useful as it both removes turn meter and gives your side turn meter. And also has that inflict defense down, which is really nice. And the Grim Voyage passive is still very useful to decrease turn meter on the enemy capital ship whenever anyone on your side dies. So that's just something to think about. Looks like you're 7-starring Shore Trooper and hopefully going to gear Shore Trooper up because he is an excellent tool, gearing up Death Trooper as well. Another one that I think a lot of people dismiss but is really useful if you have its ability maxed out is First Order TIE Fighter. It comes in, puts target lock on the other side, and immediately gives your team 15% turn meter. I think it's a decent reinforcement. It's not the best, but if you have no other options to go with, it's a great one, I think. So based off what you got, I do think those are your best options for reinforcements. Now, looking into the future, what's going to be best for you? Well, comparatively, though you may have the best ship in the game at a really decent spot right now, you don't have the worst ship in the game. Now, just having taken a quick look at this, it looks like you're maxing out these abilities, which is fantastic because you are using an arena, which means it's super helpful. However, you did make a mistake in maxing out strategic dominance first. The ultimate on a capital ship is often the second to last one you want to max out just because they deal such massive damage. It's not going to make too much of a difference. The most important one on a capital ship often to max out is what you would consider their unique or leadership ability, which in the case of Chimera is Fierce Loyalty, because this is going to give you more damage output on your side. You see here it gives 5% more critical damage and plus 5% tenacity. So that's just really helpful because you're dealing out more damage. So I would max out Fierce Loyalty next, followed by either Art of War or Phylon Beam. Whichever one you generally use first is probably the more important one to do. If you notice you're often healing, Art of War. If you're often using Phylon Beam, remove that turn meter, go there, and then Calculated Strike last. Just a little note. So back to future of the game, future of how you should be progressing. Home One's a decent capital ship. The only reason to really put too much effort into Home One is for both the Chimera, for getting Chimera, and for light side territory battles and for territory wars. And it's a really good PvE capital ship, but Chimera and Executrix both fit the PvE model as well. Endurance is just the worst capital ship in the game, still, even with Anakin's ETA. But the second best in the game, and what is used in a lot of meta fleets, and can compete with Chimera and can be used alongside some of the same fleets as Chimera is the Executrix, which means you need to gear up your Grand Moff Tarkin and probably still work on 7th starring it, which it looks like you probably are. I would imagine it's just a really slow process. Victory at all costs is the leadership ability for that. So once you start leveling these up after you level up Tarkin, this would be the one you'd want to work on. And the others, heavy ion cannon, executive order, in whichever order you want to do those two. Then Imperial Assault, and then Turbo Laser Blaster. And then what would you use with this? There's a Geos option, but there's also a Bounty Hunters option. Now, I don't want to glaze over Geos because they are still meta, and they are very useful in the meta. But if you're going to go after any one Geo, I would go after Sun Fact. It's very helpful to have. This tank can prove as a useful reinforcement at any point in the game. However, I believe you probably don't want to go that route. You have a fleet that can you are closer to a fleet that can easily compete with a Geo fleet. And this fleet is going to include your bounty hunters like Hound's Tooth. It's also going to include the Ghost or Anakin's ETA, preferably the Ghost because you probably don't want to spend money to get the Anakin's ETA right now. So Houndstooth, Ghost, Executrix, and Xanadu Blood make an excellent fleet together with at least Slave 1 as one of your reinforcements, possibly even IG-2000. I'm not sure how great that one is, but Xanadu Blood does make a great starter ship with both Houndstooth and the Ghost. And so you want to go ahead and gear up your Cad Bane, which you may need to do anyhow to get Chewbacca. So it just is a path of least resistance as it helps in two areas. I will imagine Xanadu Blood's about to become free to play in the next few weeks. So just along with Houndstooth, probably start starring up Xanadu Blood as soon as possible after it becomes free to play. And if you gear up Cad Bane and 7-star Xanadu Blood and use it alongside the Houndstooth and the Ghost as your starting 3 and the Executrix, you will not be disappointed. These are excellent ones. I personally am nowhere close to using it, so I don't know exactly how Fleet works, but it's called the WTF Fleet. I don't like that name because it refers to a specific YouTuber, a warrior, but you can go check out his video if you really want to see exactly how that works. I just refer to it as the Bounty Hunter Fleet. And all the reinforcements I've suggested to you are overall good and can work with this fleet. Overall reinforcements are more of a, hey, what's a good reinforcement rather than what works with the synergy of what I currently have out on the field. So hopefully this has helped. So again, just as a quick recap, for the current fleet I think you should be using, I suggest Chimera alongside Houndstooth, TIE Advanced, and either Ghost or Imperial TIE Fighter. If you can gear them up a little bit more, if they feel too weak right now for you, you can use something else in place of it. I don't know what would be a great placeholder. Maybe Wedge, probably not. Maybe Millennium Falcon, probably not. But Ghost or TIE Fighter probably as the third starting ship with Phantom 2 once you get Covert Strike maxed out, a Slave 1 Biggs, and a ship of your choice like TIE Reaper, Cassian, or First Order TIE Fighter as the fourth reinforcement option. I really hope this helps you out, Crazyguy. If you have any questions, just direct message me on Discord, and talk to you later. Bye.